Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer Sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade.
We chronicled the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, a good dose of laughter.
We would like you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hello, hello, hello. It's almost Christmas, isn't it, folks? And Jackie and I wanted to chat with you today, sharing memories of our Christmas music in the introduction to Christmas music in our lives, whether it be in our home, in our community, in church and school, but it all was so pivotal in laying the foundation for beautiful Christmas music that has lodged in certain recesses of our brain for years and years and years. And folks, I think that's probably true with you too. As we go along and talk about Christmas memories and Christmas music memories, we would certainly like to have you join in with us in the conversation, even though we can't see you. We know you're out there. And please feel free to comment below the picture that you see, because that way we can interact with each other, and we would love to know what your Christmas music memories were from the 1950s. Also, remember, there's that little subscribe button. We would certainly be thankful if you would click on that subscribe button. That way you would get the updates on our channel every time. And as you may or may not know, each week we usually do interview someone who lived during the 1950s with their own unique memories. But this is a little different before Christmas. And so, Jackie, it's kind of a fun time for us to relive those memories, isn't it?
It will be a fun time as we chat with each other, and hopefully others will chime in with their questions and comments. Now, do look at the bottom. There's a little banner running across the bottom which says, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s is our book. But this banner says whilethewindmillwatched.com. So go there and you'll be able to get some lots and lots of different types of information. Look also on the upper corner of the screen and you'll see the book, whilethewindmillwatched.com. And on the cover is a beautiful North Dakota sunset. It wraps all the way around it. The windmill is standing there in the barnyard of the sage, old wise, the man who has the most wisdom. And then he's looking down at the little girls. Okay, this gives you the introduction to the book. All right. Yes. So we are also going to turn it over to Janine and we're going to chat.
Yes, Jackie, I remember the first time I was exposed to Christmas music was probably when I was about 4 years old. This would have been in 1954. And Mrs. Violet Arntz was the grade school teacher at our country school in Minokan, North Dakota. We had a 2-room country school, grades 1 through 4 and grades 5 through 8. And then, of course, we had the hot lunch room and also the furnace room, which was a coal-operated furnace. And then in addition to that, Mr. and Mrs. Arntz had an apartment down there. And so she was the principal along at the same time as being the lower grades teacher. But Mrs. Arntz was a very creative person, especially with the fine arts. And at that time, and Jackie, you can probably fill in a lot better with this because you were older, but there was a gentleman who taught in the upper grades, and his name was Mr. Charles Grantier. And I believe that he too was very gifted in the arts. But he, as I recall, gave tickets, or was it just introduced Mrs. Arntz to the fact that the opera and the operetta, the program, the music program, Amal and the Night Visitors, was going to be playing at the Bismarck Auditorium. And of course, now the Bismarck Auditorium is known as the Bell, and it has very touching remembrance for me, because Belle Mayhews was my piano teacher of 13 years and exposed me to the opportunity of classical music and learning classical music. But back to Amal and the Night Visitors, I remember when Mrs. Arntz and Mom, and of course she would dress up in this beautiful pink wool coat with the faux fur collar, and her those rubber overshoes that went over her high heels, they zipped up because it gave her traction on the ice and the snow of North Dakota. And you and I went along and to see Amal and the Night Visitors. So remember that auditorium, Jackie, and how huge it seemed, and the beautiful velvet seats and the balcony, which was so exciting. And then there was that big stage ahead of us. What do you recall about that, seeing that production?
It's sort of opened my eyes and my heart to live theater. When Amal came limping in on his cane, and he said, "Mother, mother, mother, come to me with me. I want to be sure that you see what I see." That's what he sang over and over again. And he was so excited because at the door were these three men from afar, three strangers. And it turned out that they were the wise men needing a place to stop on the way to see the baby Jesus. They were following the star, and they needed a place. And so this young boy was crippled, and his mother said, "Oh no, we're not important. It couldn't be for us. Those kings don't belong here. They wouldn't even come into our poor lodging." Anyway, the story was, as Janine said, it's really, it touched my heart, and it's been with me forever.
Yes.
It's a good story.
You know what I remember is when Amal's mother would say, she was looking for him, and she would say, "Amal, where are you?"
That's
and
right.
He might not come right away, so she'd have to repeat that. And then what you say, he'd come hobbling in with one crutch on probably his right arm as he came in onto the stage. But isn't it something how those little things just have penetrated our mind back then? And I don't think I've seen them all in the Night Visitors since, but I sure remember certain scenes of it. So I'm wondering, with our viewers, what particular Christmas productions have you seen over the years, or maybe even in the 50s? Did any of you see them all in the Night Visitors? And if so, where were you? Were you in that same Bismarck Auditorium in that audience as we were? Or maybe you were even part of the cast. Please comment and let us know your thoughts about that.
Your first one may have been the Nutcracker Ballet. That has been playing for years and years. So that could have been that. And CBS has put both productions on TV. So our kids have seen it on TV, the Amal and the Night Visitors. Well, when they were children.
Sure.
That way.
But isn't it interesting to think that here we were growing up on the prairie of North Dakota, in rural North Dakota, 10 miles east of Bismarck on our farm, just north of Anoken. And yet our parents thought enough of our education outside of the classroom, or our education outside of the family, that they would set aside certain dollars to buy tickets that you and I could be exposed to this. And I don't know that every child in our community had that opportunity. But we talk about that in our book, While the Windmill Watched, in different places, how Mom and Dad provided an education outside of our home and our community for us. And of course, we had a wonderful luxury, you might say, of living close to the capital city of North Dakota. So we could take part in some of those events.
I want to say something. I believe the entire school went to this production. I was 7, but I think that I just kind of think it was all the school went. And it was because of Mr. Grantier. He was just as you said, with the arts, he was exceptional. He made sure that this little country school wasn't left out of anything. And I still have he was a weaver as well, and I have
Mhm.
placemat sets that he made for Mom. So he was a dear man.
He also had, uh, remember the dresser scarf or that went over the top of
Right,
our piano, our upright piano? It was in those
right.
beautiful soft pastel colors that he had woven for Mom. And then I
Mhm.
think she had a couple other little dresser scarves. You know,
Well,
back
they were
in the
right.
50s, dresser scarves were well used on
Mhm.
furniture.
Yep, that's right. And I think they're in the chest of Mom's chest.
Folks, Jackie is a saver. She probably has a museum of the 1950s in her home. And so when she and I went on the book tour, a book signing tour of North Dakota this summer with our book, While the Windmill Watched, A Slice of Rural America in the 1950s, she also brought along from her home our high chair. And what else was it that you brought and
It was
donated to the State Museum?
the rocking chair. So they are now in Bismarck, and there were a few other little things too, little 1950s jewelry, the poppet beads kind of thing, or the little pearls, or a little pin. Little pins were always worn, and the little tiny clothespins that one put on the Peter Pan collar. You
Yes.
can see those at the State Museum in Bismarck.
And you might see that Jackie Pfeiffer McGregor's name is put right with them, and noting that she did make that donation to the State Museum. But let's go back into Christmas music because we talked about them all in the Night Visitors and how that had such an impact on our very young lives. But in thinking of Christmas music in our home, what do you recall, Jackie, as off the top of your head, and how Christmas music was played?
Well, it was played by Janine.
It was.
That's all.
But before Janine started playing, did Mom play those songs?
You
Do
know,
you
I don't recall. She maybe played this one, Star of the East.
Yes, I
Yeah,
remember that as being probably one of the first pieces of Christmas sheet music that we had sitting on our piano
yeah.
that was played, and I always loved that scene on the front cover.
She also played the radio.
Yeah,
Really?
KFYR was playing all the time in our home because not only was it there as a comfort and a guest, you might say, in our home while Mom was working in the kitchen, but it brought the markets, it brought news of the day and from national news and local news. And so KFYR radio was huge with us. And of course, in our book, While the Windmill Watched, A Slice of Rural America in the 1950s, we talk about having been neighbors to the KFYR radio station just north of Minokan. Our land was right next to it. There was just a fence, a wire fence that divided our land from the radio land of Nugabars and then the radio station. So those radio towers were there, and it always was like that was pinpointed where our farm was. If we ever got lost, we just looked for those beacon red lights that were in this nighttime sky.
I do remember something though. Janine played the piano, and Chris on New Year's Day we would have Grandpa and Grandma and great aunt and uncles come for dinner, and then we'd sing Christmas carols. So I can
Oh,
remember singing beside just my grandma
uh-huh,
and my dad. My dad loved to sing, and so did my mom. So we
uh-huh.
were treated to their voices, especially when we were on long drives to grandpa, the other grandma and grandmas down at Oaks. Then
Mhm.
they'd be singing, and Daddy would harmonize, and it was just so beautiful to listen and to join in with
Sure.
them.
Well, it certainly made the trip go faster that way
Yeah.
too. When you showed the different pieces of sheet music that you had, I have this one. Santa Claus is coming to town. And Dad never said Santa Claus. It was always Santa Claus. And I always,
Mhm.
whenever he said Santa Claus, I always thought, oh, he must have, it sounded so casual that he must have a real strong relationship with with the guy in the red and white suit. But anyway, if you notice on this, if you can see it, the name on this sheet music is Myrna May Wees. that is my mom's sister. And so Myrna played piano also. And there was a time in our lives when Myrna was ready. She was a ranch wife at Hecla, South Dakota. And so when she married, and so she was ready to clean out a lot of that music. And we inherited so much of her music, either as birthday gifts or just as something she wanted to move on and have some fresh space. So those are some, because Jackie, I think that Christmas music, the sheet music was out on our piano all the time, don't you? Or did it go into the piano bench after the season?
Well, I have no idea. That can't remember that detail.
Okay. Well, I'd like to know what kind of music, what Christmas music was played in the homes of our viewers. Were they traditional Christmas carols? If so, what is your traditional Christmas carol that is your favorite? Or what is a favorite Christmas song, traditional Christmas melody that you like as well? I might say one thing that even though we showed you the sheet music to Santa Claus is Coming to Town and Star of the East and Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, I also remember when Silver Bells was introduced into my life. And that was during the time of our country school Christmas programs. And we talk about a rhythm band. Now, our school was so fortunate. Again, it was, I'm sure, under the tutelage and ideas of Mrs. Arntz that we had a rhythm band. And after the Christmas program was presented, our operetta, or we all had speaking parts, that's for sure. And we did a lot of singing in those Christmas programs. Mrs. Arntz was usually at the piano, and we had this neat stage. It was just a change in the metamorphosis, the upper classroom, when the men of the community or the school board would put that stage up on sawhorses. And it was a very sturdy stage, painted gray, wasn't it, Jackie?
Yes. And it had floodlights.
I know. It was amazing. We felt like stars being on that. But
what it was a bar, electrical bar, and then they screwed in light bulbs, and it was really hot and kind of dangerous to be too close to those light bulbs. But anyway, it actually blinded you, though. It was so bright.
Yes, right. Well, what was your favorite Christmas program that we did in country schools?
The one that comes to mind is called The Little Blue Angel.
Oh, yes.
And it has to do with this princess who was lonely, and she had all those Christmas presents under the tree. She said, what am I going to do with all that stuff? Isn't there something for princesses and kings that can't be bargained for or bought? And so she was searching, and she had guests come, and it ended up being that it was the little blue angel came and said, well, the Christ child is the best Christmas gift.
Yes.
So,
yes. And what part, did you have a special part in that operetta?
Well, I did. I happened to be the princess. So I had, you didn't remember that? Anyway, so I had several solos that if pressed, I could probably sing them to you today, but I won't.
Okay. And what did you wear? What was your costuming like?
Okay, I wore a yellow dress. It had been Mrs. Arntz's daughter's prom dress. And so it was a short one, but it was long on me. And so that was my princess dress. And I did feel like a princess with that, tulle over the top of this yellow dress. Yeah. Yes. So that's what I wore. I don't believe I had a crown, though.
Okay. But what grade were you in when you played that part?
I was in the 5th grade.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you had solo parts that went along with it. Mm-hmm. And we talk about that in our book, don't we? Do you have the...
Well, they're on page, if you have 38.
Okay, folks, you need to get our book.
Okay, follow along with me. Follow along, please. Okay.
Sorry.
The school programs. Each Christmas, Mrs. Arntz directed an operetta. Gave all the students from grades 1 through 8 an opportunity to have a thespian experience, whether they wanted one or not. Depending upon the operetta, students memorized speaking parts, all had group singing parts, and all were appropriately costumed. One of the most memorable operettas performed by our school was The Little Blue Angel. In the 5th grade, Jackie played the part of the lonely princess who wondered if there was more to Christmas than just things. And there was a song that went, things, 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 that's all that I can see. Okay, stop there. At the end of the program, it was revealed by the little blue angel, a classmate dressed in blue who stood behind the top of the evergreen Christmas tree, that there was something more important than things. The best gift was the Christ child. And we sisters still recall songs from this operetta.
Yeah.
And we can go on later to the rhythm band.
Yes. And how the operetta, what was it, about hour in length by the time all the students
Yeah, I
sang?
would think it would close to be 45 minutes to an hour, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It was very detailed.
We'd start singing and practicing for that probably in November, first part of November, or what was it?
Yeah, maybe. I can't recall.
Okay. And then the program was always presented, from what I recall, the evening of the last day of school. We would be dismissed from school early that day so we could go home and get our primped and get our hair washed and maybe have a nap and have a bath. And so which was unusual because back then oftentimes we took baths once a week with Saturday nights. And so to have a bath in the middle of the week was not that we were dirty or filthy people, but it was just unusual to get cleaned up, you might say, in the middle of the week. But we would go home and get ready for our Christmas program, and then of course we'd be all excited about that. At least we girls were. I don't know if the boys were or not, but then we had our Christmas program, and of course there were curtains that went across the front of the stage, so we could go up on this stage and not be seen until someone pulled the curtains. I wonder who pulled the curtains. You remember?
No, it's not important. We had wings too, though. We had wings. We could stand behind the wings, so it would be on stage but off stage.
Yes, I mean it was just this miracle mini little theater. Yes, and that's why I think I always felt that Menoken School was so special because of, you might say, we were city school in miniature form, but yet I think with the tutelage of Mrs. Arntz and the love that she had for the fine arts, we might have even had more presentations and operettas and musical presentations and musical opportunities that even children who went to the city schools had. We were very blessed back in that time in the 1950s. So we did this Christmas program. Then we had the rhythm band. This red jacket reminds me so much of the capes and the hats that we wore when we played our rhythm band instruments. Jackie, what'd you think about those capes, or who made them?
Well, mothers made them, and they were trimmed with gold tinsel around the top. And then we had little hats that kind of looked like Salvation Army hats, kind of little Navy / little Navy hats. They were.
I think we call them garrison caps.
Yes, you're right.
They're like if you're in the army, you have the
like a boot. Yes. Anyway, it was that style. And probably the mothers made them. And as I mentioned in the book, they were stuffed in a box for the entire year. And then they came out wrinkled, but they magically appeared pressed when it was time to put them on.
Yes.
So again, the mothers.
Yep. And I imagine they used a 7-Up bottle or a Coke bottle. They put water in it. And it had that little top on it, that little sprinkler top.
I still have that.
Oh, good for you.
It's about 6 feet away from me. But I won't get up.
Well, in the instruments, we played a variety of instruments in that rhythm band. I know as first graders, we started out with 2 sticks, the rhythm sticks. So we learned, this wasn't just a matter, the rhythm band wasn't just a matter of a musical presentation. It was a matter of learning rhythm at that time and learning how to handle different instruments, whether it be the rhythm sticks or the bells. When we did silver bells, I got to play the bells. I think there were 3 bells on a piece of webbing that was kind of
3 or maybe 4.
Okay, circular motion, circular size. Then we had the triangles. a clapper, the little clappers, and I always enjoyed playing the sandpaper. It just made such a neat swishing sound as you rub those two pieces of sandpaper
Mm-hmm.
together. The wood blocks,
Mm-hmm.
block,
And and tambourines.
okay,
And
yeah.
then the one instrument that everyone aspired to was the drum. Only one drum, and I got to play that in the eighth grade. In fact, I
Uh,
maybe started playing in the seventh grade.
lucky
So
you.
yes, I was tall and I could keep time to the music. So that's so so that's one the reason I think I got to play it.
I think after Mrs. Arns left Minokan School, she was there a number of years, but then she and her husband, I think as they got older, wanted to live in Bismarck, and she began teaching in Bismarck schools. Uh, uh, she was just a dear, delightful teacher, but I kind of think that that was the end of the rhythm band. I don't believe that there was a teacher who came in and filled those shoes
Mm-hmm.
for the students at that time. But Silver Bells, again, I point out that song because I thought, "Oh, well, that song must have just come out because I hadn't heard it before." But it
And
was the fact.
this is what we
Mhm,
used, the
mhm.
little golden book of
Okay,
fables.
viewers, how many of you have seen this songbook before? Did you have it in country school? Did you sing Christmas songs out of it? Did you sing patriotic songs out of it? Please comment below. We'd love to know. And oftentimes was it once a week, Friday mornings, we would have what was called opening exercises, and then Mrs. Arms would play the piano, and we get to choose songs out of that songbook, whether it be Christmas time or any other time. And also, we might think that that's too. Oh, come all ye we sang the traditional carols. That's what we sang, and the "Oh Come All Ye Faithful." That's when Mrs. Arns taught us the Latin to it, Adeste Fidelis. And so we got a little bit of a foreign language instruction in country school during that. How many of you who are watching have had the opportunity to learn the Latin version of "O Come All You Faithful"? It's it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And so please comment below. Say yes or no. I know that song or I don't. Or yes, I've learned the Latin or I haven't. And while you're doing that, please click on the thumbs up button for this broadcast because we hope you like it. And we as our memories down the lane of music in the Christmas time in 1950s are what we're sharing today. Okay, Jackie, moving on to Sunday school in our country church, Minoka Methodist Church. Any special recollection there of Christmas music?
I can't record anything, call anything special. Likely we sang carols. And there was always a creche.
Mm-hmm.
And, until I was an adult, I think it never dawned on me that Mary was probably not a blonde. But in our in our community, Mary needed to be blonde. She, if you were blonde, you got to play Mary, which is kind of a skewed thing. But anyway, there were a lot of blondes in where we lived.
So, okay, so was it the white dishcloth, white dish towel that went over your head then?
And then there was either that or there was blue fabric too that was somehow wrapped around you, or maybe it was over the head. I don't remember, but yeah, the dish towel probably would have been employed.
Probably every bathrobe in the community, every child wore was worn in the Sunday school Christmas program.
Right.
And what I remember is singing "Away in the Manger." I don't know for how many years we sang it, but we were rocking the baby Jesus back and forth in our arms, and of course back then I don't remember any parents taking pictures with cameras while the music was going on or the programs were ongoing. Do you?
No, I think it was sort of a sign of respect, and now that's totally out the window. If there were pictures, it would have been after the production.
Sure. Okay, and then going on into, of course, as we got older, our lives in the end of the 1950s, our Christian life moved into Bismarck and we started going to Trinity Lutheran Church. And the reason we did that was so that you could start going to confirmation. Is that correct?
That is correct. And then you followed me,
Hmm.
right? Uh-huh.
So that would have been after the 50s.
Yeah. Right. Yes. What, early
Okay.
60s. Yes. And then
Hmm.
what I remember there about Christmas is that after confirmation class, we students got to decorate the tree. That was the one downstairs in the social area. We did
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So really our spiritual education, you might say, started at the Minokan Methodist Church, and certainly with the impetus of our neighbor, Mrs. Richard Salter, Mabel Salter, Grandma
mhm,
Salter, we called her, because she lived just about a half mile, quarter mile north of us. They did on the farm. And
mhm,
Grandma Salter would always stop and pick up Jackie and me for Sunday school and have her granddaughters, Jannie, and Patty Salter with her. So every Sunday, she was so religious about taking us to
mhm,
Sunday school, which was marvelous that we had that beginning of Christian education in the 1950s. And then mom and dad would usually get chores done and then come in to church services and be there for after Sunday school for church services. And it was Reverend Edward or
right.
Edwin Parker,
Edward.
who okay, was our pastor. And maybe some of you listening had him as a pastor because he was a roving pastor. He not only pastored the Minokan Methodist Church, but also 5 miles east at the McKinsey Methodist Church, and then going east of there to the Sterling Methodist Church. So he was a busy gentleman and certainly impacted our lives. But Mrs. Grandma Salter and Mrs. Jenny Dance, who was this, I believe, the Sunday school superintendent,
Mhm.
they were the who I thought of as the religious icons of our small Minokan, North Dakota community. They were very, very well respected, and
Mhm.
I think by children and adults alike. Oh, okay, folks, comments about your Christmas programs at school or at Sunday school? We'd love to know more about them. Because that's what makes life interesting, and especially when you can recall those memories and as being positive and joyful in your life and impactful on you as adults. So, Jackie, anything else that you want to add as far as Christmas music in the 1950s that influenced us?
Do you want to mention music club?
Oh, yes. Yes. Jackie and I both had the wonderful opportunity to have been piano students at the Mayhew's Conservatory of Music in Bismarck.
Mhm,
Jackie took from Mrs. Wilson. Was it
mhm.
Mrs.
Yes.
Do you remember her first name?
No.
Okay.
She was just Mrs. Wilson.
Yes, yes, and my teacher was Miss Belle Mayhew. I started as a preschool when I was 5 years old in a class, and of course we couldn't read music then. We couldn't
Didn't
read. We didn't
read.
have kindergarten, and we didn't know how to read until we got into school. So Miss Mayhew had this wonderful way of teaching preschoolers how to read music and how to associate the keys of the piano with music. It was wonderful, but every month, once a month, I think it was during the school year,
Yeah.
we would have what's called music club. And music club was divided by the ages of the students. And of course, when you were preschool, you were in the Tiny Tots Club. And then it went from there on until finally you got into the advanced music club. But what I remember, Jackie, is when we would get away from practicing classical or of the classical music songs or the technique songs that we were being taught, and probably in November we would be Miss Mayos probably would ask us to go down to Guy Larson Music Store, which was downtown Bismarck, and purchase a piano book that was appropriate for our age and our ability of playing the piano at that time. And then we had to play Christmas carols, and it was so much fun. And we would often then play Christmas carols for the music club of December, the month of December. Do you remember any
Right.
specific songs from that time?
I do not. Sorry.
Okay.
I just know I like playing the sonatas. That
Ah,
was my favorite
uh-huh.
music. Mhm.
Yes, yes. All of those different opportunities that we had, Jackie, in order to be exposed to music and fine arts, from the introduction of a mall and the night visitors all the way through the decade of the 1950s, with opportunities in our country church, in our country school, and in our home, prepared us so well for musical love and the enjoyment of music in our homes. And as we became mothers and influenced our children with music as well. So we'd sure like to know, folks, if you had those opportunities and what were they like for you. Please comment below. And again, we are so glad that you have joined this 1950s fun chat. We just have a ball doing this. And so next week we will be back on with another guest who will talk about experiences of the 1950s. So Jackie, what do you think about today?
What do I think? I think Merry Christmas to all. And I also want to remind people to press the little like and the little subscribe button, and join in next time as we interview another person at the 1950s Fun Chat.
And remember, each week, the new broadcast, the new recording with a new guest will go live on our YouTube channel, the 1950s Fun Chat, this channel right here, at 8 o'clock Central. And of course, then it's archived and you can watch it or listen to it whenever. You know what? You know, folks, how often I rewatch those, re-listen to those. It's when I'm in the kitchen baking. They're really fun to replay at that time, then pass the time, or when you're driving in the car, or just need something, a fun refresher from the 1950s. So we hope that you have had fun today. Remember, it's not too late to pick up a copy of our book, While the Windmill Watched, A Slice of Rural America in the 1950s. You can go to our website at whilethewindmillwatch.com and see where all the different vendors who sell our book. But if you don't have one locally in your neighborhood or your neck of the woods, just click on that order here button and the NDSU bookstore will gladly send one to you. You know, our book makes a great stocking stuffer, whether it's before Christmas or after Christmas. And there are cold days coming up in this winter. So why not capture one of these books and just have a fun time reminiscing about the 1950s. So we're glad that you joined us today, folks. We'll see you next time on the 1950s Fun Chat. Bye-bye and Merry Christmas.